And welcome back to the channel. I am Pastor Roy here at Woodlawn Christian Church in Lake City, Iowa, and this devotion is for Tuesday, July 16th of 2024. We're more than halfway through July. Wow. And we are quite a ways through Galatians. We're going to start chapter 6 today, so we are in the final chapter. We'll spend the next 3 studies talking about Galatians, and we'll move on to something else. Not sure what book we're going to jump into next. Probably one of the books we did during COVID time, when I was doing those live streamed on Facebook, and they just aren't the best. So I want to redo some of those. So anyway, that's where we're going to go. Today we are in Galatians. We're going to look at verses 1 to 6. Paul's starting to wrap it up. We change his pace a little bit here. It's the last chapter. Better wrap it up, hadn't he? So let's jump into verses 1 to 6, and then we will talk about them just a bit. Brethren, if a man is overtaken in any trespass, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Look to yourself, lest you too be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. But let each one test his own work, and then his reason to boast will be in himself alone and not in his neighbor. For each man will have to bear his own load. Let him who is taught the word share all good things with him who teaches. Can't read. We're reminded, or at least I'm reminded a little bit of when Jesus talks about, if your neighbor has a speck in his eye, remove the log from yours, and then you can see clearly to get the speck from his eye. Here he's saying, restore them gently, but be careful that you don't, that you're not tempted too. We've got to be careful that we too don't, sin is attractive. Sin usually doesn't come to you as something awful. It usually is something that attracts us. That's the downside of sin and why so many sin. And so we're to correct people. It's not, people try to say, oh, don't judge. We can't correct somebody. Jesus tells you to remove the log from your eye, and then you can see clearly to remove the speck. Here, brethren, if a man is overtaken in any trespass, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Look to yourself, lest you too are tempted. But we are to correct. And also, when we go to James, my favoritist book, that's a word, favoritist. You know that, don't you? James chapter 5, verses 19 and 20. My brethren, if anyone among you wanders from the truth, and someone brings him back, let him know that whoever brings back a sinner from the error of his way will save his soul from death and will cover a multitude of sins. We're not to just let our brother and sister carry on doing things that are detrimental to them in the long run. That's not what we're supposed to do. Even though the church has gone to that, in fact, we have put a stamp of approval on many sins that are deadly sins that are going to cost people their salvation. And we rather than telling them, even if they're doing them quietly, telling them, trying to correct them, we're telling them it's okay. Look, how bad can we be? How worse? What could we be doing this worse? Let's put it that way. Again, not easy for me to spit it out, but you know what I'm saying. I hope you do. We are supposed to correct one another. We do it in a spirit of gentleness. We don't do it with hate. We don't do it with anxiety, or not really anxiety, but anger. Anger starts with an A, another A word. We don't do it with anger or hatred or whatever we want to say. We do it with gentleness, the spirit of gentleness. I can't talk today. Forgive me. Look to yourself, lest you too be tempted, though. And that's, again, as I mentioned earlier, got to be very careful. Sin is attractive, and we don't want to fall for sin. But that's why it's even the worst that we stamp these things and say that it's all good for people, and that it's already a problem, and they're already attracted to sin. And we tell them, go ahead and be attracted. There's a lot of things about, adultery, is something that of course is attractive, but guess what? It's a sin. And so we don't be doing that. And let's not get to the point where we're not necessarily saying adultery, though we do. We do, for we tell people it's okay to do this, that, the other thing, to live together and whatnot, and that's, guess what, that's not right. um, but he who is without sin cast the first stone, as they say. But yet we take that log from our eye and remove the speck from our neighbors. Not that we don't tell them about their sin. So that's very important. We need to remember that. We need to be aware of that and watchful for that. Finally, let him who is taught the word share all good things with him who teaches. He's talking there about, I'm going to back up just a little bit, Roy. In 4, but let each one test his own work, and then his reason to boast will be in himself alone and not in his neighbor, for each man will have to bear his own load. We're supposed to work to support ourselves. It's not that we're supposed to be mooching and leeching off of each other. But then he says that working for God, that part there, let him who is taught the word share all good things with him who teaches. Teaching the word is the work of God. Therefore, Paul is talking about supporting folks in formal ministry, such as myself. I'm well aware. Seems a little self-serving. Don't like talking about self-serving things, but it's there. You are supposed to support the ministry. You're supposed to support those that are spreading and teaching, spreading the word and teaching. But we're all supposed to spread and teach, so there's that too. But those that are in that formal capacity, such as myself. So again, don't like talking about things where it seems self-serving. I've always said I'd like to pray for other people, but I have a difficulty praying for myself. That is just something about myself. But you should pray for yourself. You should pray for guidance, protection. Pray protection for yourself. Pray that you will not be tempted. That's part of that, taking that log out of your eye, is praying for yourself. So don't be like that. Don't do like I say I do sometimes. It is something that, just because of the wanting to be as humble as possible, because that's what we're supposed to do. If anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. And that verse rings true to me. But it doesn't say don't pray for yourself. That's not what he's getting at. But again, I will confess, I have issues with that. Just as I have issues with saying, hey, you got to be paying me what I'm worth and all of that. I'd rather let someone else champion that. But that's enough of that. I'm rambling now. That's where we're going to stop today. We'll pick up with verse 7. We'll go 7 to 10 on Thursday. Have a blessed day. If you enjoy these devotions, if they do something for you, leave them, like and subscribe. Leave a kind word. We'd love to hear from you. And in the meanwhile, let's bear one another's burdens. Let's make sure that we are helping each other to get through this thing we call life, so that we will, all of us, get to true life with Christ. God bless you. Take care. God loves you. Bye-bye.